So, let's start this story off from the beginning. So, on October 27, 2012, the Houston Rockets acquired James Harden from the OKC Thunder. They also got Daquan Cook, Cole Aldrich, and Laser Haywood. It was a blockbuster trade for the Houston Rockets, a team that was rebuilding and now got a star in James Harden. So now let's look at the Houston Rockets 12-13 season. This year, the Houston Rockets went 45-37, which is a huge improvement, considering the last season they went 34-32. But now let's talk about what they did in the 12-13 playoffs. In the playoffs, the Houston Rockets go against the number 1 seed OKC Thunder, which is James Harden's former team. In Game 1, the Rockets lose the game 91-120, which now puts them down 1-0 in the series, heading to Game 2. In Game 2 of the series, the Rockets fall short again, losing the game 102-105, and now down 2-0 in the series. But they get to go home in Game 3. Game 3 in Houston, the Rockets fall short once again, losing the game 104-101, now heading to Game 4. In Game 4, the Houston Rockets are able to win a very close game, with the score being 105-103. They get to avoid the sweep and now head back to OKC for Game 5. And in Game 5, the Rockets were able to win, and now they push the series to 6. And in Game 6, the Rockets unfortunately lose, and now we head to the offseason. In the offseason, the Houston Rockets were able to sign the 6'11" big man to Dwight Howard. Just the season before, Dwight Howard was on the Lakers averaging 17-12. And now he brings a much-needed inside presence for the Houston Rockets. So now let's move to the 2013-2014 season. So in the 13-14 season, the Houston Rockets went 54-28. That's 9 more wins than they had last season. So now let's head to the playoffs. So in the playoffs, they played LaMarcus Aldridge and Damian Lillard at Portland Trail Blazers. In this series, the Houston Rockets were favored to win. So let's see how the series went. At home, the Houston Rockets lose a close one, with the score being 122-120. Now they're down 0-1 in the series, heading to Game 2. In Game 2, the Rockets lose again, with the score being 112-105. And now we head to Game 3, which is in Portland. And in Portland, the Rockets was able to avoid going down 3-0 in the series, winning the game with the score being 121-116. James Harden also had 37 points that game. So now let's move on to Game 4. In Game 4, the Houston Rockets lose a close game, losing the game 120-123. And now they go down 3-1 in the series. Now moving on to Game 5. In Game 5, the Houston Rockets were able to win the game, winning the game by 10 points with the score being 108-98. And now they push it to Game 6. And in Game 6, the Houston Rockets lose the game like this. So now let's head to the 2014 offseason. In the offseason, the Rockets signed Troy for a reason, bringing him back to the team, and they also drafted Clint Capella, a big man they would like to use in the future. But now let's talk about the 14-15 season for the Houston Rockets. In this season, the Rockets went 56-26. This is the second year in a row where the Rockets won 50-plus games. So now, let's talk about the playoffs. In the playoffs, the Houston Rockets played the Dirk-led Dallas Mavericks. And in this series, the Rockets were able to win the series in 5 games. And now advanced to the second round for the first time in this video. And in the second round, they played Lob City. And this was a close series. So I'm going to go game by game with this one. Of course, starting off with Game 1. In Game 1, the Houston Rockets lose the game by 16 points, with the score being 117-101. And now they're down 0-1 in the series heading to Game 2. In Game 2, the Houston Rockets were able to get the win, winning the game 115-109. And now they tie the series up by 1-1 apiece. In Game 3 of this series, the Houston Rockets lose the game by 25, with the score being 99-124. And now they go down 2-1 in the series. And in Game 4, it was another massacre. The Rockets lose 95-128. And now they're down 3-1 in the series. And now we head to Game 5. The Rockets can either lose the series and go home or push it to Game 6. And in this game, the Rockets were able to win the game, winning the game by 21 points with the score being 124-103. And now we head to Game 6 of the semifinals. In Game 6, the Houston Rockets win again, with the score being 119-107. And now we head to a Game 7, win or go home. And in Game 7, the Houston Rockets win the game by 13, with the score being 113-100. And now we head to the first Western Conference Finals of the James Harden era. In the Western Conference Finals, the Houston Rockets will play the 67-15 Warriors. This Warriors team being led by MVP and Steph Curry. And in this round, the Rockets will go home in 5, putting an end to a great season for the Rockets. And now let's move on to the 2015 offseason. In the offseason, the Rockets signed Montrezl Harrell and Ty Lawson. But let's move past that offseason and go to the regular season. This season, the Rockets didn't do too well as they did in the other seasons. This year, the Houston Rockets went 41-41, which had them at the 8th seed. But moving past that, let's talk about the playoffs. In the playoffs, the Houston Rockets will play the 73-9 Golden State Warriors. In Game 1 of the series, the Houston Rockets will get blown out by the Golden State Warriors, losing the game 78-104. But let's move on to Game 2. In Game 2 of this series, the Houston Rockets will lose again, with the score being 106-115, and now they're down 2-0 in the series. And now we head to Houston for Game 3. In Houston, the Rockets will win a very, very close game, with the score being 96-97. And now the Rockets are only down 2-1 in the series. Let's head to Game 4. In Game 4, the Houston Rockets will just get blown out, losing the game 121-94. And now they're down 3-1 in the series, heading back to Golden State. And in Game 5, the Houston Rockets will get blown out again, losing 81-114. And now we head to the 2016 offseason. In this offseason, the Houston Rockets got a new head coach, Mac D'Antoni. Dwight Howard also left, so now they have Clint Capella out there starting center. So now let's talk about the regular season. In the regular season, the Houston Rockets went 55-27, which put them third in the West. A huge improvement from last season. But now let's move on to the playoffs. In the playoffs, they'll play the 6th seed OKC Thunder. And the Houston Rockets will win this series in 5. And now they advance to the semifinals where they play the San Antonio Spurs. Spurs team led by Kawhi Leonard. In this series, the Houston Rockets will fall in 6, putting an end to a decent season by the Houston Rockets. Now, it's time for the 17th offseason. This offseason, the Rockets were able to get Chris Paul. So now this team consists of Chris Paul, James Harden, PJ Tucker, Trevor Ariza, and Clint Capella. Also a few key pieces off the bench. So now let's move into the 17-18 regular season. The new Houston Rockets were able to go 65-17, which put them first in the West. And now let's head to the playoffs. In the first round, the Houston Rockets played the Minnesota Timberwolves. And in this round, the Rockets were able to get rid of the Timberwolves in 5. And now they head to the semifinals. In the semifinals, they played the Utah Jazz. A Utah Jazz team led by Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell. In this round, the Rockets got rid of the Jazz in 5. And now the Rockets head to the second Western Conference Finals under the James Harden era, in which they'll play the Golden State Warriors. The Rockets had a great chance of going to the finals. Sadly, in Game 7, they blew it, missing 27 straight threes. And with that being said, the Rockets lose Game 7, and now we head to the offseason. In the offseason, the Rockets pretty much kept the same team they had last year. So now let's talk about the 18-19 regular season. This year, the Houston Rockets were 53-29, which had put them 4th in the West. So with that being said, let's move to the playoffs. In the playoffs, they played the 5th seed Utah Jazz. And in this round, they beat the Utah Jazz in 5. And now they advance to the Western semifinals where they play the Golden State Warriors. And just like years prior, the Warriors beat the Houston Rockets. And this go around, the Rockets lose in 6. And now we head to the 2019 offseason. 2019 offseason, the Rockets made a blockbuster trade. They sent CP3 to the Thunder for Russell Westbrook. And during the season, they traded Clint Capella. So for half of the season, the Rockets were without a center. They had a 6'5" PJ Tucker playing the center position. And for the record, they went 44-28. And then the player to play against LeBron and AD led Los Angeles Lakers. And the Rockets would lose in 5. So let's head to the offseason. In this offseason, the Rockets would trade Westbrook for John Wall, but Harden wanted out. He grew tired of losing. So during the 20-21 season, the Rockets traded Harden, traded him to the Brooklyn Nets. And that season, they also got KPJ. And for their record that season, they went 17-55, which of course means they didn't make the playoffs. But now let's move to the 21-22 season. In the 21-22 season, the Houston Rockets were 20-62, which is a 3-win improvement. But they still were a bottom team in the West. Now that brings us to today. I think this team to win like 25 games this year. But I do see them having a bright future, with KPJ and Jalen Green leading the way. But alright, that's all I got for this video. And if you like the video, I'm just saying, I think you should like and sub. But not for real though, that's all I got for this video. I'm out.